In the shadows of ancient history, there existed a terrifying belief that consuming the flesh of the young could grant unimaginable power. Tribal leaders, desperate for strength, convinced their people that the essence of youth held the key to eternal vitality. With each ritual, they fed on the very life force of their own kin, a grotesque act driven by fear, survival, and the thirst for dominance. But what if this belief was more than just a superstition? What if, in those dark times, it was the ultimate weapon to control not just bodies, but minds? In the deepest corners of human history, before civilization tamed the savage instincts, there was a chilling belief that devoured the very soul of survival. To consume the young was to inherit their strength, their vitality, their essence. Picture this: ancient tribes fighting not only nature but the brutal law of the wild, where every decision, every ritual, was a matter of life and death. It was not just hunger for food. It was hunger for power, for an edge in a world where weakness meant extinction. In these harsh times, survival instincts ran deep, and power was not something given. It was taken through fear, blood, and bone. The young were seen as a symbol of untapped energy, a life force untouched by time. Leaders, consumed by the thirst for dominance, spread the myth that devouring the young would grant them unimaginable strength, the power to defeat any foe, and the vitality to rule over their tribe with an iron fist. The belief wasn't just a tale told by the firelight. It was a deadly pact, forged in the darkest corners of the human psyche. For those in power, eating the young wasn't simply a sacrifice. It was a tool, a weapon to forge dominance, to control. It wasn't just about survival. It was about control over life itself. The very essence of a child, the untapped potential, became a currency in the most primal form, one that would haunt generations to come. And as these ancient tribes lived on the edge of death, they clung to this belief as the only means to defy it. Beneath the surface of ancient civilizations, there was a horrifying practice that lingered in the shadows: ritualistic cannibalism. It wasn't born out of mere hunger. It was a dark, sacred act performed in the name of power, of domination, and of survival. Picture the flickering flames of a fire, casting long shadows over a tribe's sacred ground, as elders and warriors gathered, preparing for a ritual that would send tremors through the very soul of the tribe. The young, those untouched by age and time, were seen as vessels of untapped strength, unspoiled, pure, and full of potential. But it was this very purity that made them the ultimate offering. To eat the flesh of the young wasn't seen as barbaric. It was seen as an ascension, a transformation. The leader, the strongest, would feast first, absorbing the energy, the power, and the essence of youth. Each bite was believed to bring not only physical strength, but also the power to command and conquer. Cannibalism in this context was not just a grotesque act. It was a spiritual rite. It was believed that by consuming the flesh, a leader could absorb the spirit of the youth, taking their vitality, and by doing so, forging an unbreakable connection to the gods, to the earth itself. But this wasn't just about power. It was about controlling the very lifeblood of the tribe. The act was a reminder of dominance, a horrific but sacred tradition that ensured the survival of the strongest. And so, with each sacrifice, with each ritual, the line between man and beast blurred, and the people were bound to a brutal, unrelenting cycle where power could only be gained through death, through the consumption of the innocent. In the heart of ancient rituals, there was one undeniable truth. Power and youth were inseparably linked. Imagine the grim faces of warriors, their eyes hollow from hunger, yet filled with an insatiable thirst for dominance. To them, the young were not just the future. They were the key to everything. They believed that youth held a sacred, untapped power, a force so potent that by consuming it, one could unlock unimaginable strength, vitality, and influence. The blood of the young was thought to be a bridge, a direct connection to the divine, and a path to immortality. The youth represented not just physical strength, but the essence of life itself, untouched by the burdens of age or experience. In a world ruled by the brutal laws of survival, the old and weak were seen as expendable, their fading vitality no longer of use. But the young, with their unbroken energy, were seen as the embodiment of purity and untold potential. To consume them was to absorb that very potential, to take their life force into one's own body. It was more than just cannibalism. It was the very act of stealing the future, of seizing the power that the youth were believed to carry within them. In the eyes of those who practiced this dark tradition, there was no greater wealth than youth. It was a commodity more valuable than gold, more sacred than any artifact. With each bite, they believed they could harness not just strength, but the will of the gods themselves. The young became vessels of power, and to consume them was not just to survive. It was to conquer time itself, to cheat death, and to secure a place of unshakable authority. It was the ultimate manipulation of nature's most precious resource, life. In the cold, unforgiving darkness of early societies, fear was not just a weapon. It was the foundation of control. The ancient leaders understood that power wasn't merely about strength or influence. It was about creating an unbreakable grip on the minds of their people. And in a world where survival was a constant battle, fear was the ultimate tool to ensure obedience. The terrifying rituals of consuming the young weren't just about gaining strength. They were an intricate web of manipulation, designed to keep the tribe in line, to keep them afraid, and to keep them loyal. Picture the elders standing before a fearful crowd, their eyes burning with authority as they preached the sacred need for sacrifice. The young, whose lives were seen as the key to power, became the symbol of both hope and terror. The act of consuming them wasn't simply an act of power. It was a display of dominance. Leaders showed that they could take what they wanted, when they wanted, and the people had no choice but to comply. The message was clear: defy us, and you too will become food for the strong. Fear kept the tribe bound to the will of their leaders. It was a cycle of terror, where those in power used ritualistic violence to remind everyone of their place. It wasn't just the physical act of consumption that was feared. It was the belief that one's very essence, their future, could be devoured in an instant. This cruelty was a constant reminder that, in these early societies, survival wasn't guaranteed. It was earned through subjugation and terror. The young became the currency of control, their deaths ensuring that the old and the powerful would remain unchallenged. Fear wasn't just a shadow. It was the law of the land. Centuries have passed, yet the chilling echoes of ancient rituals still haunt the shadows of our collective memory. In every culture, there are whispers, remnants of myths and legends that speak of times long forgotten, times when power was claimed through the blood of the young. These dark tales, once rooted in horrifying truths, have morphed over the ages, becoming part of our folklore, our fears, and our nightmares. But the question remains: why do these stories endure? Why do they continue to grip us, even in the modern world, where the horrors of the past seem far removed from our reality? The answer lies in something deeper, something primal. The idea of consuming the young for power, for eternal strength, is more than just a superstition. It's a reflection of humanity's deepest fears. The fear of losing control, the fear of aging, and the fear of being consumed by time itself. As the world evolved, these ancient beliefs transformed into dark legends passed down through generations, like the tales of monstrous creatures that feast on the innocent or the myth of immortality gained through unspeakable means. These stories, though seemingly fantastical, are a mirror to the darkest corners of the human soul. They reflect our obsession with power, with youth, and with control. We may no longer practice these rituals, but the shadows of those ancient beliefs still linger in our psyche, feeding into the fears that we carry with us today. In every whisper of legend, every modern horror film, we are reminded of a time when strength was taken through terror, and the price of survival was more than anyone should ever have to pay.